Hey guys, welcome to Cooking with Dave, and today we're going to do a ribeye roast. Uh, the slice of meat is boneless ribeye. This is Kroger Nolan Ryan. I've done it with prime. You can do it with choice. It doesn't really make a difference. Obviously, with prime, it has the prime taste, but when you're done, it comes out very good either way. So this is about 6.5 pound boneless ribeye. I have a cup of butter that you let it kind of defrost and get soft to where you can
So it's at room temperature.
at room temperature, easily manipulable, so it's nice and squishy. I've squeezed in a full head of garlic. It sounds like a lot, but once it cooks out, you still use it for the sauce. You really need about that much to retain the garlic taste. In the seasoning here, we have 2 tablespoons of rosemary, which has to be chopped up very finely, 2 tablespoons of thyme, 2 tablespoons of salt, 1 tablespoon pepper, and I also add just a little bit of Flavor God garlic lovers. So what you'll end up doing is mixing that all in together.
Maybe you should have put it in a bigger mixing bowl.
Yeah, I normally do, but it's fine. The only part, once with this little bowl, once I've gotten all of the stuff on top inside, it mixes pretty easy. You want it to be really well mixed. The important part about this is your hands need to be clean, very clean, because you end up basically distributing this on the cut of meat with your hands. Some mistakes I've made in the past. If you let the butter come to temperature just by sitting out, if it's not quite soft enough to where it's malleable enough, microwave it for literally 5 seconds at a time. Because if you overheat the butter, it loses consistency, becomes very liquidy, and then it's going to take quite a while for it to be of a high enough consistency to where it'll spread like this. Because the whole thing is you want it to be very kind of thick. You don't want it to, when you pick it up, for it to kind of flop off like a liquid. So as you can see, pretty much all of the herbs and seasonings are mixed in here. So I start with the meat fat side up. I have patted it dry. If you look, it looks a little bit shiny, but it's been patted completely dry. So I start with just the top surface, because this surface will ultimately be on the bottom. So you want to make sure you get a decent amount here, but ultimately this will mostly drip off.
So you're rubbing your meat with the butter mixture.
Yes. So once you got it to about here, I have this cooking rack in a metal cooking pan.
So you flip your meat over and put it into the buttered side down.
Yes, the side you first buttered, because then basically everything that you have left butter-wise you can get out of there. And now you've got basically 3 sides to cover with what you have left. I tend to, because you know it's gonna melt in the oven, I tend to try to leave quite a bit on top here because it'll melt, drip down the sides, kind of lock in some flavor. But you want to try and make sure that all surfaces of the meat at least have a little bit of the butter.
So I have a question about
Yes.
the meat. So beforehand, do you let it sit out to get to room temperature, or do you
Yes.
just pull it straight out of the fridge?
So pull it out the fridge. I leave it on the counter for at least a few hours to let it get to room temperature, because you do a very quick at temperature cook. If the meat is cold, it's not enough time for the center to get up to temperature. Basically, what you'll find, depending on your oven, the recommended is for each pound of meat, 5 minutes at 500 degrees. So the oven is preheated to 500 degrees. The meat is good to go. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick. Get the butter off.
Are you doing this on the bake or the broil setting?
So I find that it comes out better on bake. Bake heats it from the top in the oven. Actually, I believe it's the top. But either way, it's the bake setting.
Okay.
It's what's recommended. I think bake actually does from the bottom, which
Yes, bake does from the bottom.
yes, the broil, if it did it from the top, would burn the roast, versus baking it from the bottom kind of cooks it more by convection.
Plus, you got all the fat on the bottom.
Exactly. So as it sits, it's 500 degrees. Into the oven, and what I found in my oven, for about a 6-pound roast, I go a little bit under time.
Well, it should be, you said it was 6-pound roast, 6.5
It
pound in
differs.
5 minutes.
Yes, but
So that should be about 33 minutes.
it depends on the oven. No two ovens are going to do exactly the same temperature. I've done this enough times where I know, for me, for this size roast, 29 minutes. Kick it off. Once it cooks like this for 29 minutes, obviously don't open it at all during the time. Once it hits the time, whatever time you set it to, hit the off button on the oven without opening and let it sit for 2 hours. That finishes the cook. Once we're done with that, we'll go on to the next part, which will be how to set up the gravy for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're back to about 2.5 hours later. The meat is done, coming out of the oven.
Isn't that hot?
No. So this is what it looks like done. And as you can see, all of the fluid that has come off, that is going to be part of our sauce. So move it over. This can go into the sink. So here we're going to start. On the stove, we have 2 cups of beef stock. We're going to start that, put it to a high setting. Okay, so here is the sauce. I used 2 cups of organic beef stock. I took all of the drippings that had ended up in the pan from the roast into here. 2 tablespoons of flour, and I've put it here to boil. As you can see, it's starting to boil now. You want to keep whisking it every 30-40 seconds. Now that it's come to a boil, turn the heat off.
It barely came to a boil.
That's plenty. So obviously there's a lot of extra stuff in here you don't want. So you have whatever serving dish you want, and a strainer.
So you want to strain it because you don't want all the stuff that was at the bottom of the serving pan that fell off or burnt off or whatever to end up in the gravy. So that's why we're straining it. It's only there to give it flavor initially, but once you've finished with your gravy, you go ahead and strain it.
Yeah, because this is all the burnt garlic, the rosemary and thyme that was roasted in the butter.
Okay.
So you can just let this cool, dump it. Here is your gravy. Here is the roast. And in a few minutes, once the veggies are ready, I'll cut it and video us cutting it so you can see what the inside looks like.
Okay.
We have the finished product. Going to cut a piece for myself. And that's what the inside looks like. Very medium.
Okay. Looks pretty good. And you just plate it and pour your gravy on it, huh?
Yep, plate it. This is the gravy we literally just fixed. Try not to pour it on your counter like I just did. And you're good to go.
Okay.
Another episode of Cooking with Dave.